One thing I want to point out before I give the introduction of Lisa is that a lot of discussion we have had seem to be focused on the early part of sales. And this session will be very different because this is for the later part. And a lot of the focus will be on the enterprise level selling and not the small business kind of sales. So yeah, so to introduce Lisa, it's not easy. Lisa is the author of two award-winning books, The Top Seller Advantage, Powerful Strategies to Build Long-Term Executive Relationships, and The Top Sales Leader Playbook, How to Win 5X Deals Repeatedly. That's the one her session is based on today. Lisa is an award-winning sales manager and led the charge as a sales VP for several sales organizations across a variety of geographies, including executive positions with Fortune 50 companies across a broad spectrum of industries, including technology, software, security, healthcare, medical device, insurance, and manufacturing. As a founder of Topline Sales, Lisa has worked with senior sales leaders and their teams to achieve phenomenal results, especially in the area of big account wins. Lisa also founded and facilitated the Sales Executive Mastermind Group for sales VPs in the Pacific Northwest. Our session today is based on her book, The Top Sales Leader Playbook, How to Win 5X Deals Repeatedly. And with that, I want to add, Lisa is also a very popular teacher in the uh, uh, LinkedIn Academy. So go check out her if you're a member of LinkedIn and you have access to their content, go check out her courses. They're best value for time that you can get. Lisa, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. And I really have appreciated our relationship over the years. Um, we are going to dive in with the short time that we have. And you mentioned my LinkedIn learning courses. I just want to share them as a resource. I have 3 courses on LinkedIn learning, and one is on engaging executives. Actually, it's my most popular course, and that's going to be our focus today. So we're going to talk about my book for a second and one of the plays in the book, which is win themes. Then we're going to dive into the power of win themes, what executives care about the most, and how to quickly develop and deploy. And then we're gonna wrap up. So it's going to be a rapid fire session. When you're talking about big deals, big, messy, complex deals, I call them 5X wins, though worth about 5 times your average deal size. You have to do things differently. And one of the things that you have to do is you have to engage your executive sponsor. I have been focusing on 5X deals with my clients for many, many years, and it's rare that you don't need a sponsor who is endorsing the project and your company. However, here's where the challenge is. It is very hard to access a senior leader, an executive, your executive sponsor, whether it's a big prospect or one of your key accounts. And the only thing harder than accessing an executive is having that executive keep the door open for you. And so one of the reasons I wrote my playbook, Sales Leader Playbook, is there is really a system that goes into winning 5X deals. And this playbook is for sales leaders. It's for managers, sales VPs, sales leaders, so that they can put a system in place to generate the activities that lead to winning 5X deals repeatedly. And one of the most popular plays of the 16 plays in my playbook is engaging executives. So that's the one that we're going to dive into. So we've got a big challenge. These are busy people, influential people, hard to get to. What can we do to increase our chances of not only having a positive conversation when we access them, but having them keep the door open? And one of the key solutions is win themes, the notion of win themes. And what win themes are your decision maker or senior executives' top priorities, not their needs or their, sort of those kinds of things, which you have to concentrate as a salesperson on those too. But this is a level up, their top level priorities, why those priorities are important, and how you can impact those priorities. So that intersection of their priorities and your strengths, and it could be your company strengths, not necessarily your products or solution strengths, but it could be that too. But where that intersection happens are win themes. And I call them win themes because they contribute to a winning conversation with an executive or senior level decision maker that will cause them to want to leave their door open for further conversations. And when you have that kind of access, that's when you win, not just once, but repeatedly. So, little more detail on how they work in this very short micro session. Basically, you have to learn about what those priorities are. You can get hints and clues from research, from doing an executive dossier, but really you have to have the conversation. So yes, do all the research. Gather what you think those priorities are. You can also talk to the people that work for the executive. That's a great place to start. But what are those priorities? And then in that conversation, you're going to want to validate those. Don't just assume you know what they are. Validate those priorities and why they're important. And only after you've done that can you apply your strengths. So when you're in that discussion, you have to quickly translate their executives into strengths that you have. Your company could be your products and services, but also could be resources in your company, programs in your company, anything that can impact those priorities. And then it's really helpful if you offer some evidence. Evidence could be examples, case studies, stories, anything that kind of brings it all together and makes that conversation memorable. So basically, when you're engaging with senior level decision makers, executives, you want to improve that access and you want to keep that door open. And the best way to get the receptivity is through alignment and impact. And by doing that through win themes, you will differentiate yourself, differentiate your company. In some cases, you can block your competitors, and also you can unlock resources that maybe weren't available before, because all of a sudden that executive or senior level decision maker is very interested in you and your company and how you can impact their top level priorities. And if more resources need to be allocated for that, they will allocate those resources. So pretty darn powerful. And when it comes to this particular area of winning big, complex 5X deals, we want to ring the bell, because those deals take a long time to identify, develop, and close. And we know that along that time frame, we do have to access those decision makers and senior level executives. And by the way, sometimes it's the leader that has to do that, the sales leader. Even when in organizations that have senior salespeople, they might not quite have the skill set and the executive presence. So many times it's the leader that has to initiate those conversations and then bring the senior salespeople along. But when that happens, you get to ring the bell. And my book is all about ringing that bell repeatedly, because there's nothing better in sales than big deals and an engine that drives those big deals over time. All right, that was the super short version of win themes. So I can take some questions. While I'm waiting for some questions to be served up, one of the questions that comes up frequently is, how are priorities different than needs? And when you think about what a customer needs, their pain points, what the things they're trying to accomplish, those are really important. Those are at the foundation. And as salespeople, you're not going to get a big deal unless you are dealing with those pain points and those needs. But executives and senior level decision makers think about things that are a level above, and that's what I call priorities.
Before we bring in some questions, Lisa, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
That is, I hear a lot that when you have this buying committee and senior executives are involved, I mean, if the CFO is involved or the CEO is involved, their objectives could be significantly different from the end user of that product, right? Which
Yes.
means you need to understand as a salesperson what are the outcome requirements for the CEO or the CFO or whichever other senior executive you're talking to, vis-a-vis the product that you're selling and your end user, maybe a few tiers down the line. How do you align these when you're trying to do a big deal like the ones you're talking about?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a question that salespeople really struggle with. And if they can't make that pivot from talking about needs and their products and services and how they can meet those needs or meet that criteria, if they can't pivot to a higher level conversation around priorities, then even if they get access to a senior level executive or decision maker, the door won't be open. That is not what those people want to talk about. They want to go a level up and talk about priorities. They're looking at taking their company to the next level. Their priorities might have to do with growth. They may have to do with employee retention. They may have to do with market share. Those are examples of priorities. Downstream, they connect to those needs, but you have to keep that conversation at a higher level and not just understanding what those priorities are, but connecting the strengths that your company has that can help them with their priorities. And those strengths may not be your products and services. Maybe you have executives that have experience that you could connect them to in your company. Maybe you have programs for senior executives where they can network and idea share. There's all kinds of ways that companies can impact an executive's priorities. The other thing that I was going to point out is win themes are based on one senior executive's priorities at a time. Because if you're talking to the CTO versus the CFO versus the CIO, they all have different priorities. And so
Exactly.
it's one executive at a time.
Yeah, and yeah, so basically you need to do I mean, I use the word very loosely, that you need to discover the priorities of these executives separately, not in a group discussion, so to say. And
Right.
once you have found that, you have to go back to your own drawing board and ensure that the proposal that you're sending out actually covers all the bases.
Yes, and in most cases, you're not going to be sharing your proposal with an executive sponsor. If it's a decision maker, then yes, you want to be having the proposal discussion. Because remember, we are talking about complex. This isn't your normal sales process. This is a complex sales process. Maybe lots of people on your company side, lots of people on the prospect or key account side, and it plays out over months or in some cases even years. But so there are lots of conversations that are occurring. And if a sales leader knows that this is the best way to engage those executives, then they can help their senior sales people gather that evidence along the way as they're having those conversations. So when you get to that C-suite executive, you know what you're going to be talking about. And it's going to be a conversation that's meaningful. And one of your big objectives is to leave that door open.
Absolutely, absolutely. One more question,
Yeah.
I think is there. Yeah.
So, how distinct is a sales leader's objective from that of other members of the team? So, let's assume the sales leader is a sales VP. And maybe that sales VP is managing senior salespeople, or maybe they're managing a manager who manages the salespeople. So their objective is different, because what they want to do is create an engine or a system that drives the identification, the development, and the closure of big deals, 5X deals, as I call them, repeatedly. Not just one. Most companies kind of have one, it's their banner account, but we want to be able to have a system in place that does it repeatedly. And the sales leader has to understand all the components, which is, in my book, I divide up into 4 areas, 16 plays that cover most of the components to put that system in place to drive those deals repeatedly. And then sometimes the sales leader actually has to come into the deal many times, almost maybe all the time, to help, because even a senior salespeople person isn't always going to get a meeting with a senior executive. They need the gravitas of the sales VP to help them get that done. They may even need the CEO of the company, of their company, to get that done, or another senior leader in their company to get it done. So yes, their roles, there's overlap, but they're very distinct. Great question.
One last one, Lisa. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there another question that you're going to, let's see.
Yeah, it's there on the screen. Can you see that?
No. Oh, yes. How to bring in the C-level insights to the salespersons to enable them to better engage with the senior executive. That's a great question. There is so much work, pre-call prep work, that goes into calling on an executive, and it absolutely, I'm a big fan of creating an executive dossier. If you're going to want to call on an executive and have that door left open, an executive dossier would include all the things that you believe that executive cares about at the company level, at their people level, maybe those specific projects, and all of those are clues as to what their top priorities are. And there's information that you can access. We all know those places, public places that you can go to access information, but the very best way to fill out that dossier is to talk to people within the executive's organization. Also, the very best way to access an executive is through somebody in their organization. So maybe it's your main contact, and maybe you set that expectation early with that person that you want to engage with that senior executive, and can they help you to do that? But they also can give you an inkling on those priorities. So lots of prep. Those are big, important calls, and you want to carefully craft that discussion flow.
That's wonderful, Lisa. This was a great session. I hope we didn't rush you through it, but yeah, but this was great. I think that even the discussion post presentation was great. I think we have some great questions and great answers there. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your taking the time, and I hope to see you again when we do the next one.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for everything you've done for this event. What a wonderful opportunity for your listeners.
Thank you, Lisa. We'll be right back with Tom Williams talking about buyer-centric selling. Be with us. We'll be back right soon.